Greetings and welcome to Kerbal Space Program and the reusable wizard endeavour which we will be embarking upon. That being an attempt to reach into space, perhaps establish a base on the moon. I think that's probably a mining base on the moon is probably a good initial objective. And we're going to do all of this with a fully reusable space program. And we're going to do it, what's more, in vanilla Kerbal Space Program using the 1.1 prerelease. This introduces all manner of difficulties and complexities, which we shall go into as we progress. As you can see, it's a full career mode game. We've got a completely unleveled up space center here, and we're going to have to build everything we need, and we're going to have to do it whilst being fully reusable and environmentally conscious. Let's grab a couple of contracts. First, of course, just gather some scientific data from Kerbin and launch our first vessel. Both very easy to do, even with our extremely limited tech and our self-imposed rules. Things start out pretty easy. We're going to, of course, build ourselves a little launch vehicle here, just something capable of getting off the ground. We have unlocked no technology. I'm using the spaceplane hangar because going forward, we're probably going to focus on using the spaceplane hangar, partly because it makes sense to focus on one or the other for funds, and I think the spaceplane hangar at this stage is going to be most useful to us because a lot of what we're going to be building are going to be planes and things. That, of course, isn't the case for our first vehicle. Our first vehicle is just going to be a little vertical takeoff, vertical landing rocket here. I've given it a couple of little wings just because. And of course, we need some science on there so that we can complete our contracts. We'll put a couple of goo canisters, generally all in and around the place. We're going to flip it around and launch it vertically like this. As you can see, it's nothing particularly fancy. In fact, it is pretty much the most basic craft I could build, and therefore I'm going to name it for the most basic spell I could think of in Dungeons & Dragons, which is Cantrip. Yeah, that's right. I'm going to name all of my vehicles after D&D spells. So there she is, the Cantrip, ready for launch with plenty of science goo all over and about the place, which we shall make use of here on the launch pad because we can start getting our science in right from the start, of course. We'll get like a crew report, we'll get an EVA report, all that good stuff, trying to maximize our science. I probably am going to miss some science here and there. I've not played a huge amount of career Kerbal Space Program, so if you see me obviously missing easy ways of picking up extra science, do make sure to let me know. Okay, I think we're ready for launch. We have gathered as much science as I think is available here, and the ship is ready for launch. The first flight of the Cantrip. It's going to be a straight up and down affair, nothing particularly fancy. 3, 2, 1, launch! And we blast into the air. Valentina, whoa, look out! Hold on, somebody forgot to check the staging. This is obviously how long it's been since I played Kerbal Space Program. We had the parachute on the same stage as the solid rocket booster ignition, so they both fired at the same time. Fortunately, that's not really going to affect our flight because we just wanted to go up and come straight back down anyway. It might mean we don't get far enough away from the space center to pick up a new set of science on the goo, although we might do. I don't know, I guess we'll have to wait and see when we get down to the ground, which will take a little while as we're coming down under the parachute. Must remember, in future, check staging. Very important, especially when you're trying to run a fully reusable space program like this. Fortunately, time acceleration can eliminate a lot of that for you, and we are now down on the ground, or at least we're about to touch down. There we go, touchdown, and the Cantrip stays nice and neatly pointing skyward. A successful landing, obviously those landing struts doing their job, protecting the solid rocket booster, making sure that we can reuse that. We get a little bit of sciencey goo as well from our experiments. And that's it. Recover the spacecraft, and we recover it in its entirety, minus a little bit of solid rocket fuel. 4,463 funds recovered. And this is how we are meaning to go on. Okay, this was very, very easy, but the idea is to try and get as much recovery as possible each time, and really to throw nothing away. That's kind of the objective. Perhaps more importantly for our first flight though, we got 28 science, or we're up to 28 science, which means we should be able to unlock some cool stuff. Let's take a look. What we want to get to very quickly, as quickly as we can basically, is aviation, because a lot of our initial launches are going to be based off of plane type designs, because as soon as possible we want to be able to land horizontally, I think. That's the only way I suspect to carry a decent amount of weight up high, trying to land everything under parachutes vertically, unless we maybe try to do some kind of rocket assisted landing, but I don't know. We'll experiment as we get there, but of course first we have to unlock engineering for the Science Junior. Communitron, less important because we're going to recover everything. No unmanned launches for us. and the stack decoupler that we will probably never use, although, you know, maybe once we actually get to orbit. A liquid fuel engine, the hammer solid rocket booster, and a fuel tank. We'll take that. What have we got left? 18. We can actually get stability, which leads to aviation, so that's probably what we're going to want to do, or general rocketry, or survivability. Survive, my Kerbins. No, I think actually stability aviation is going to be our first stop, so that we can get some good research planes going for the Reusable Wizard Endeavour, which I have to remember to keep calling it, so that people don't call me out and say, Reusable Space Program, but surely Scott Manley already did a Reusable Space Program, and he did it far better than you, because he is just better than you. Well, yes, as far as Kerbal Space Program goes, I'm certain he is, but fortunately for me, this is actually a very different type of space program. When Scott did it, he of course was not doing it in a career progression. In fact, I don't think career progression was even around back in those heady days, and whilst his Reusable Space Program was definitely part of the inspiration for this one, the actual mechanics of making it happen are going to be quite different. Not to mention the fact that Scott tends to actually think things through and do the math, whereas I tend to just stick stuff together and hope for the best, which is, I think, a perfectly acceptable way to approach the problem. Speaking of approaching the problem, I've simply improved the Cantrip by bolting in a Science Junior, and I'm assuming that that is going to be absolutely fine. So let's take it to the launch pad. Do you know what I forgot to do? I forgot to pick up any new contracts. Well, that's fine. Look, we can just do a quick material study here on the launch pad. Maybe a mystery goo as well. Is there any more the mystery goo can tell us from the runway? Sorry, not the launch pad, the runway. It seems not. Fine. Now we'll just recover the spacecraft. It was really just like a wheel-out test. Yeah, let's go with that. I totally meant to do it. Mission Control, what new wondrous contracts do you have for us that we can do here? Well, Orbit Kerbin, obviously we are a way away from being able to do that. Haul the RT-10 solid fuel booster into a suborbital trajectory. We're probably a way off being able to achieve suborbital trajectories either. Focused observational surveys of Kerbin. I can imagine us doing quite a lot of these once we've got a slightly more capable craft, like a plane or something that can actually fly around. There's not a lot here that we can actually do, you know. Haul an Mark 16 parachute into flight above Kerbin. We can do that. We can probably hit an altitude of 4,000 to 10,000 meters. I'd say that is achievable. Should we take that? Advanced 6,000? Yeah, we'll take that. Now, I've got no idea if the Cantrip can make that kind of altitude, because frankly, we've never had a successful launch that didn't also involve deploying the parachute. But assuming that it could probably get something like that, I have simply moved it unmodified to the launch pad here. We'll get a bit of launch pad science before we blast off, so it's not a complete waste if it doesn't work. And then all we need to do is light the fire and roar up into the heavens, gaining altitude pretty quickly here as that solid rocket booster, the Flea, burns through its solid fuel as quickly as possible. We're up to, what's that, 2,000, 3,000 meters. I forget what the required altitude was that we had to reach. We're doing 120 meters per second. There we go, look, we've done it. We've actually done it. We've activated the parachute, and we have achieved success. Altitude 4,000 to 10,000 meters. Speed 100 meters per second to 220. We think we only just did it. Look, we capped out at 4,500 meters there. And I think we probably dropped below that altitude below the speed threshold pretty quickly as well. But nonetheless, the Cantrip has done what it needed to do, and it has successfully completed the objective, assuming, of course, that we come down. Whoa, what's going on? Why is it flipped round? It's now nosediving towards the ground. I think Jebediah might just be messing around with me here. Can we get this thing possibly to come back and land properly? There we go. As the parachute kicks in, opens up, and we drift slowly towards the ground, it does indeed right itself. Oh, that was a little bit of a heart stopper for a moment there. No need to watch the rest of the descent. We come down nice and gently under the chutes and land at a fairly sedate 8 meters per second, well within the tolerance of those landing struts that we have bolted on the bottom of the Cantrip. We can gain a little bit more science here, which of course is fantastic, and we have completed the second flight of the Cantrip. Second flight in the bag successfully. Obviously, I'm now filled with confidence and decide that it is the right time to hire a non-orange suited Kerbinaut to be my main test pilot. There is only one pilot, so we hire her, Treaty Kerman. She is going to be the awesome, badass test pilot extraordinaire of the Reusable Wizard Endeavour. Next up, we take a look at the contracts and we find a nice simple contract to test a decoupler, and rather than just making a simple test rig, I just decide to bolt it on the bottom of the Cantrip. I mean, that's going to work, right? We'll just have it stuck on the bottom of the Cantrip like that. We'll do the test, and then we'll fly off somewhere, and we'll do a third jaunt in our little rocket ship. Because, you know, this is the advantage of having a fully reusable space program, is we get all of our funds back, or almost all of our funds back. So it doesn't matter if we do more launches than we strictly need to. We might find somewhere with some science. Look, this is the view from inside. Yeah, it's not that great. It's true. But anyway, look. Oh, is that new? Is that like a new thing? Like a new little bunker or something? I don't remember that being there before, but then maybe I just hadn't noticed it before. Here we go then, ready to test launch. Wow, okay. There was a big explosion as we jettisoned the part, but hopefully that has satisfied the contract successfully. And we might as well just go for a little test ride now, shall we? 3, 2, 1, fire! Rocket engine start. We are burning up into the sky. I'm going to try and bank over the back, I think, here a little bit. We're going to try and turn over and fly out to a further away biome. We're trying to clear the KSC altogether. Maybe get to the grasslands out there or the coast. I think those are the two easy biomes to reach from the space center. Look, we're actually kind of flying for the first time. Jebediah Kerman is the first Kerbal to actually fly horizontally. It's an extraordinary new and strange concept for the Kerbals of this world. Of course, this comes before all of the Juno 1 and a bit stuff. This is effectively the tale, the story of how the space program first came to be for this particular version of the Kerbal universe. Look, we're not really flying horizontally anymore. We're more sort of plummeting straight towards the ground at high speed. Jebediah, are you sure about this? I think maybe we need to activate the parachute. We're getting quite close to the ground. I want to get as far out as possible though, and as soon as I activate the parachute, I'm going to kind of arrest my horizontal movement. Look, that's enough. Look, oh no, it's too late! Oh no! Alas! Alas, but it was too late. Fortunately for Jebediah, and indeed for the entire Reusable Wizard endeavour, I am the aforementioned wizard, and therefore we can revert time to the launch, thus wiping away our terrible and hideous mistake, returning Jebediah to life, and of course recovering the Cantrip as well, through the power of magic, which we will try not to abuse too much, but I'm not making any promises. So here we go, we'll just launch again and go through the whole process, testing, launching, firing the parachute, hopefully this time a little bit higher up than before, and landing safely on the ground, completing our fourth flight? I'm not quite sure how we should count this. The Kerbals are also probably aware that magic has been employed to prevent the previous catastrophic destruction of the ship. And they're quite glad, of course, that such things are available to them. More importantly than that, we now have enough science to unlock Aviation, which allows us to begin construction of our first plane-like vehicle. A revolution in technological design that should make all manner of new possibilities available to us. Before that, though, we quickly check the contracts, and as it happens, there is another pad-based decoupler test that we can perform. It's basically exactly the same as the last one, only bigger. So let's do it and get it out of the way. 3, 2, 1, launch! Oh, and fire the boosters. Look at that, it gave us like a little kick. And in fact, the Rockomax thing, the decoupler, survived as well, which makes it far superior to the previous one, which exploded, thus slightly compromising our completely reusable test program. But fortunately, because it was just like a contract for some third party, it doesn't count, okay? Treaty Kerman in command here of the Cantrip, also trying to arc the ship over and fly it horizontally in some kind of manner, learning a little bit from Jebediah's previous attempts. Look, we actually got a fairly decent little bit of horizontal flight there. What's our speed? Dropping rapidly. Actually, it's building back up again now. 90 kilometers per second. 100 meters per second. Sorry, not kilometers per second. That would be crazy fast. Deploy the parachute nice and early. I actually think I left it kind of late again. Come on, quickly, quickly. Activate the parachute. What are we at? 300 meters? I think we're going to be fine. Yeah, okay. Surface velocity has dropped right back down again. I kind of left that perhaps a little bit late again, trying to get a little bit more distance. But it's fine. Look, it's absolutely fine. Still 250 meters. We can speed up time until we land successfully on the ground for the completion of our 5th flight? Yeah, 5th flight. That's what we're going to go with. 5th flight. Well done, Treaty Kerman. Was that your first flight as well? Look, can we get a bit more science? We can. Kerbin Grasslands. Excellent. Good work. Let's grab all the science from here then. A slight distraction, obviously, from the pursuit of a new and wonderful space plane technology. I say space plane, of course, it won't be going to space. It'll be staying right here on the ground. We got a good bit of science, though, from that completion of the contract, and of course, as well, visiting the grasslands biome. Got all our funds back from the spacecraft, and Treaty Kerman has gained 1 experience. Good for her. So, retiring the Cantrip for now, we move on to aeroplane design, Aeronautics, for the purposes of building some kind of survey craft. Now, this isn't going to be orbital or suborbital capable. Obviously, it's only intended to basically fly around the space center, fly around to nearby biomes, and perform scientific observations. So we put a science junior on there, obviously. We put a couple of these tiny little jet engines on. Also, like, masses and masses of jet fuel, actually, as it turns out. Probably way, way more than we need. But, you know, I thought it might want to, like, do a long-range survey or something, maybe take it to the poles. Who knows? I was being quite optimistic, obviously. Ideally, what I would like from this craft is for it to be able to perform science observations not only in the air but also to land, perform science observations, and then take off again and return to the Space Center for full reusable awesomeness. That is my cunning plan, and to that end it is equipped with landing gear, of course, so that it can land and take off. Just fixed because that's all that I have available. 2 science juniors, a whole load of goo, and like I said before, a butt-ton of fuel to get me anywhere I need to go. Plus the snazzy Mark 1 cockpit there for the Kerbal to sit in with a lovely view of the outside. What it is markedly missing, or rather notably missing, is any kind of parachute safety system. And I'm not entirely convinced about the wings either, but you know what? Let's just test it and see how it goes. It will need a name, and this is going to be called the Detect Magic, another level 1 D&D spell, because it is going to fly around detecting things. Therefore, it's the Detect Magic. Perfect, right? Let's see how she flies. Alright, so here we are on the runway, ready for takeoff. What is going on with those wings? We're getting a little bit of judder. Something odd is definitely going on with those landing... Oh, we've had an explosion! One of the landing gears, obviously composed almost entirely of dynamite, has detonated. Let's quickly recover the craft. Obviously, there was something wrong with that design, or possibly the landing gear. I have heard that in the 1.1 prerelease, the landing gear can be a bit weird. It could be because of the way we've got these attached. Look, we've got basically fuel tanks attached to the side of fuel tanks, and then wings attached to the side of the fuel tanks as well. So we're kind of without struts. Maybe it's just not stiff enough. Alright, let's try putting the landing gear on the main fuselage itself. That's gotta work, right? Then it's like, it's as stiff as it can be. It's attached to the stiffest part of the entire... Oh no, it's just exploded. It's just exploded on the launch pad. Sorry, Treaty Kerman. Unfortunately, obviously, the magic that powers this vehicle has gone horribly awry and caused the inherent dynamite structure to detonate. Okay, so with those 2 failed experiments in building a horizontal flying airplane of a fairly traditional sort, I have decided that clearly being traditional is a bad idea, and we're going to go with something slightly more unconventional. Something that kind of fuses technology that we know to work in the Cantrip, i.e. the vertical takeoff system, with perhaps some slightly simpler and more straightforward landing systems based on struts. We're just going to try and land on struts, basically, is what it comes down to. We're going to avoid the weird jitteriness of the current implementation of landing gears and just land on struts. What could possibly go wrong? 2, 1, TT Kerman, rocket start, and we have liftoff. Look at that, look, it's flying. It is flying. Cut the thrust altogether. Look at this, we're flying. TT, you are flying. You're actually flying. It's like a dream. All we've got to do now is land it on those skids. Yes, indeed. All I have to do is land it on the skids successfully on uneven ground in an untested aircraft. Can I successfully land it? Well, you will have to wait until next time to find out, because we have run out of time this time. But the reusable wizard endeavor shall continue in the next episode. But until then, thanks a lot for watching, everybody. I have been Weird Wizard, and I will see you later.